Dear all, thanks a lot for coming to attend our SSGSA webinar on higher studies opportunities in Canada. And today we are lucky to have our two speakers. One is Dr. Mohammad Zeeshan. Dr. Mohammad Zeeshan, he did his BSc and MSc Physics from Aligarh Muslim University. Then he did his MTech at IIT Kharagpur in solid state technology. And then he just completed his PhD in quantum information at the Institute for Quantum Computing, University of Waterloo, Canada. Regarding our second speaker, we have Mr. Ehsan Sabri Islam. So he did his BSc from macrotronics engineering from University of Waterloo, Canada. Then he did his master's MSc in interdisciplinary engineering from Purdue University, USA. And also he's right now pursuing MBA from Chicago Booth School of Business, University of Chicago, USA. He also works at Argonne National Laboratory, which is the DOE, Department of Energy Laboratory of the United States. So he works at Argonne National Lab as a vehicle systems engineer. So we thank you both the speakers for agreeing to give this webinar. So we'll request our speakers, Dr. Mohammad Zeeshan first to go ahead with the presentation. So Zeeshan bhai, it's up to you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Wasiko, for the introduction and organizing this seminar. I'm really glad to be a part of this initiative. So today I will be presenting this presentation on higher education opportunities in Canada. So let me just check. All right. So this will be the outline of our talk. We will start with the overview about the educational landscape in Canada. Why do we why should you choose Canada as a destination for your higher education? Then I will cover the admission criteria. What are the application procedures? When is the deadline and how to approach it? Then I will cover the finances, like how much should you expect to spend, and what kind of scholarship opportunities are here, and these things. Then Ehsan Bhai will take over from there. He will cover the estimated cost, the study permit requirements, and the in general overview of comparison of how, like, what's the difference between studying in Canada and USA. So let's start. So this is the general overview. I mean, what you see here is just the map of Canada. The Canada is divided into 10 different provinces, just like we have different states in India. So each province has its own educational policy. Is it some kind of noise coming from? All right.
Hello, can everybody mute themselves except the speaker? That will make it easier for everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. So so the different color shows you the different province, and every province has its own educational policy. We have highlighted like some of the top institutes from different provinces, and you have British Columbia and Alberta. Like, those are the westernmost states, and these are some of the universities that are there, some of the top universities. But of course, when we define top universities, it will change depending on what is your field of study. If you're in bio, if you're in engineering, if you are in social sciences, everything, right? You have to choose the institute that fits well for you. The biggest state in Canada is the Ontario, this blue one, and Quebec it's a French-speaking state, so it has a dual educational policy. You can have the education of medium in English as well as French. So this is just to give you a flavor of what Canada is. So straight away going to why should we choose to study in Canada, especially for higher education. So of course, Canada is consistently ranked in top 10 countries to live and study, right? So it is home to one of the world top academic institutes. There are many public and private funded universities, and especially if you are aiming for higher education, it doesn't matter whether you go to public and private, because either way you will be funded. So if the fees is high, you don't need to worry about it. It will be covered in your scholarship. Then, of course, Canada has a relatively easy visa process. So if you are funded, if you have got admission offer, it should be really easy to apply for it and get approved. Also, Canada has a really good industrial internship opportunities. So there is a co-op model in Canada where you can take some terms off between your study, and you can work for companies as a part-time student. So that gives you a really good experience while you are doing your master's or PhD. It works, but like this co-op is quite famous for undergraduate, but there is an opportunity that even in your master's or PhD, you go for these co-ops. Canada has a very affordable tuition and living expenses. So yeah, as I said before, it will be funded for you. So it's not a big issue. The big plus is that Canada is very multicultural. It's like a melting pot for different cultures, and you will find every possible what you call ethnicity around you, and it's a very good way to what you call experience your higher education. And it's an English speaking country, most of it at least. So it will not be an issue if you're coming from India, from AMU. After graduation, you can start your career in Canada, because Canada gives you an open work permit, which is generally for 3 years. So you can work in private companies. It's up to you that if you want to stay in Canada and work. And it also opens up an opportunity to immigrate to Canada, because after 2 years of open work permit, you can actually apply for after PR, you can apply for citizenship and those kind of things. So there are options available, not just in with respect to education and jobs, but you can also immigrate. So coming to the admission criteria, when you start applying to Canada, of course, the most important criteria for admission is your academic background. What is your CGPA? What kind of research experience you have? If you're applying to a particular field, if you have a research experience, that's a big plus. Publication is another big thing. If you have publication, it increases the probability of you getting admitted. And of course, GRE and language tests, they are also important in a way. I will talk about it later on in much more detail. So applications are submitted for specific faculty or program, not for institute. So if you are applying for, say, biology program of University of Toronto, so you will apply to that one particular department only. So in general, if you want to search for it, just go to the university, just Google university name, add the department, and just look at the online application. So it will give you a link for that page that you can go and apply for the admission. So the proof of English language proficiency is a must for visa application. So you need to have either TOEFL or IELTS for it. So every university in Canada accepts both of them. So you can choose which one you prefer. But I will recommend you to go to university website of that particular institute and just double check it because in some cases they prefer one over the other. For example, if you are looking at the computer science program of Waterloo, the minimum TOEFL requirement is like this: like you need to have 100 overall score, 26 writing, 26 speaking. For IELTS, you need to be over 7.5. So yeah, this is just to give you an example. It can be lower than that, it can be higher than that. But once you zeroed in, like once you decide that you want to apply for this institute, you should go and check it. Now coming to the application process. So the academic year runs from September. So the academic year is divided into three semesters kind of system here. First is the fall, that runs from September to December. Then there is winter that runs from January to April, and then there is spring, which runs from May to August. So you can get admitted in any of these terms. So admission happens throughout the year, especially for masters and PhD. But what I've seen, like from my own experience, because almost in every country the academic year ends in August. So fall is a term where most of the people get admitted in their masters or PhD. So if you are, especially if this time of the year, if you're planning to get admitted, you should aim for the next year, next fall, and you should start applying for it. So to increase the chances that you get accepted, you should start your application at least 8 to 12 months before the course starts. So this is just a rough number, but it's a safe number to start, because every institute have their own deadline, but this is just like an upper limit for that. So the online applications are available at the institute website, and the applications are not like hard copies. Those most probably they are some kind of online portals. So you need to just make your profile and submit the fees, submit all your documents. And of course, the deadline depends from institutes, and different departments have their own deadline. So you need to go in and check each criteria. So coming to the most important thing, which is the admission approach. So it changes from person to person, right? If you have a very strong background in a particular field, you can directly contact the supervisor. But if you're someone who are not sure where to look for, these are the points which you can do it in this order. This is a kind of recommended way. So you go to the institute website first and check whether you fulfill all the criteria, because every institute has uh, a minimum CGPA requirement, that is in last 2 years you should have at least this much percentage or CGPA, and you need to have this much TOEFL score, or in some cases they even ask for GRE. They don't give you the minimum cutoff for GRE. I couldn't find one from my own experience, but it is not like main weightage. Like the main weightage goes to your academic criteria. GRE is just kind of add-ons. So if you have a score above say 300, right, it's good. You can apply it. It will add weightage to your application. So yeah, once you know that you are like you satisfy all the criteria, you can prepare your statement of purpose, which is a kind of a letter in which you state that why you want to do research in particular field, or why you want to continue masters and everything. Make a CV, prepare it, and I will also recommend preparing a short description of your projects. Like if you have done some summer project or any project in your institute, right? You think that it will add to your application, you can make a short description, and get all your academic documents ready, which are university transcript. So I hope everybody know that university transcript is a bit different from MU, because that's what I realized when I was in Aligarh. Your mark sheets are not transcript, so you need to go to registrar office and apply for get those transcript as soon as possible. You can do it anytime after you have completed your degrees, and get references from 2 to 3. It can be your supervisor or some project leader under which you have worked. And what I've seen in Canada, like most of the engineering programs, they don't require GRE, but some of the science, like fundamental sciences and biology and social sciences, they require GRE scores. So of course you need to go and check whether it is applicable or not, and if it is, then yeah, get this course and this GRE ready for yourself before applying. And the most important thing is to contact the potential faculty, right? So there are 2 ways to approach the admission. First is you apply for a particular university, you make your portal, you fill the fees, and you submit all your documents online, and then you apply, and then you wait. So a university has its own admission, what you call system. It will filter you, it will choose you as a potential candidate, and then it will send your profile to different faculties, saying that this faculty is interested in your profile, and he or she will want to have a Skype interview with you. So this is just like a standard way of application, especially in masters. But either way, you need to have some kind of approval from a professor. So I will recommend that you, even before applying, you contact the potential faculty. So if you have a certain background, choose a faculty that fits your background, or his or her work interests you, then you can directly send an email to her and him. And I hope Sir Syed, like GSA is a very I mean, they are doing a lot of this kind of thing where they are mentoring students about how to write CVs and everything. So you can always take help from Basikul and the patrons from Sir Syed GSA to help you in how to contact potential faculties. So this is the last step. Once if the faculty takes your interview and he or she likes you, it really increases the chances of getting in that program. And that also saves money, because if you're not sure, anybody, like, because everything requires like every application fees is for every institute is different, and you have to pay at least 125 to 150 dollars, which is like 7 to 10,000 Indian rupees. So you apply that money and you don't know whether you will get admitted or not. So it is recommended that you contact the faculty beforehand if you can, and get his or her approval before applying. That will make the whole process much more smooth. So this is the next thing is the finances. Like if you get admitted in a certain program and if the faculty approves you, what are your finances? Like how much you need to pay. So in most of the postgraduates for MS, I should write actually MSc here, and doctorate studies, the scholarships cover most of your tuition fees, and it will come from your GRS, which is Graduate Research Studentship, RA, which is Research Associate something, and then you have the project funding from the faculty. So for sure, you don't need to worry about your tuition fees. It will be covered. There is no way that they will give you admission without giving you the funding for your fees. And then there are other merit-based scholarship, which are like NSERC, postgraduate, this kind of scholarship. You have MITEC awards. It's also very a kind of a public-private partnership. And then you can always visit like some websites and look at the university website. So this is one of the link. Like it's a quite handy link. It's from the Canadian government, and you can go there and look for the scholarship opportunities for international students. And there is also an opportunity for paid teaching assistantship, so you can assist different coursework. So during your master or PhD, they will assign you a duty as a TA for a particular coursework, and you will get paid on an hourly basis on those ones. So that will add up on top of your scholarship. Based on my experience, PhD student don't need to worry about finances, because GRS funding will cover your tuition fees, and it will also give you enough money. Like if on top of that you will have enough money left with you that you can fund your stay and food and everything. So you don't need to worry about anything. If you go to Canadian visa application center, they give you a rough number that you need at least 11,000 Canadian dollar every year to justify that you can stay in Canada. So the scholarship that you will get, or the GRS you will get, you subtract the tuition fees from that, and you will have at least that much money. So you don't need to show any financial proof when you apply for visa. It will just get approved because you have that much money. Of course, for master student, it may differ. In some cases, you won't get that much money. You won't reach that number, that amount of saving that you need. In that case, you need to show at the time of visa application that you have this much money in your account. But of course, as a student, you can work part-time and you can support. If this is the scenario, it's not the end of the road for you. You can always work part-time, and there are both on-campus and off-campus job opportunities for students in even in the university campus. So but there is a limit, like how much hour you can work in a week. With the student visa, I think it is 160 hours per term. Like in 4 months, that much you can work at least 20 hours per week, and the minimum pay for a job like that is at least $13.4 per hour. So you can work part-time during your study, and you can fund that extra money. So yeah, from now on, I will hand over to Ehsan bhai. He will cover from here. Ehsan bhai.
Thank you, Zeeshan bhai. Again, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us here in this webinar today. So what Zeeshan bhai had covered, it basically covers all the steps from looking at the universities doing the research before applying the admission process, as well as the finances. What I'll cover from this point onward is basically what happens after. So when it's looking at the cost, so there is some fixed costs. So for example, so in terms of finances, as Zeeshan bhai mentioned, like you will have funding for if you're a master's or a PhD student. But in terms of the cost, so we have the generic tuition fees, which could range between 12,000 to 25,000 Canadian dollars every year. So this tuition fee, again, could vary depending on the location, the university. So as Zeeshan bhai mentioned in the beginning of this webinar, there are 10 provinces with very reputed universities across. So they could vary the cost depending on your program. So master's or PhD, depending on your program and the university and the location as well. So your tuition fee could vary. So we had covered basically how it could vary from a location to another. Similarly, the living cost could also depend on the city that you're living in. So for example, generally, if you're looking at provinces, Ontario is on the expensive side compared to other provinces such as Quebec or Alberta, other Ontario, British Columbia. These are on the expensive side, so it could depend on the city. Again, so along with the province, you would also have to account for the city that you're living in. So for example, in Ontario, there is like university towns such as Waterloo, Guelph, and then there is actual cities like Toronto, which would also change your living cost significantly. So there are a lot of statistics in terms of how much the living cost would be depending on the location. But this is in general what this living cost would include is your housing, your other expenses, miscellaneous expenses such as phone bills, etc., phone bills, internet, etc. And then there comes the food and other expenses, which would be about 300 to 800 Canadian dollars every month. Plus is like the health insurance. So Canada has universal health care program. The Canadian citizens and permanent residents, they have the healthcare through the government. So the students, the international students, they get it through a program called UHIP. It's University Health Insurance Plan. So it is per member. Only fee is $720 for the year, which is included in the tuition fee. So when you get the tuition fee bill, your UHIP bill will be included in it. Now, if you have additional dependents, so that each additional dependent would be another $720. So basically, the member plus one dependent would be additional $720 outside of your tuition fee. And then the same goes if you have more dependents beyond that. Next slide, please. So for after, so these are after you've done all of your research, and now when it's time to apply for study permit after you've got your offer letter. So basically, after you apply your for university, and then after going through the admission process, when you have your offer letter, the very next step to do is to apply for the study permit and the visa. So study permit is required for international students to be able to study in Canada. So this is kind of the link that you would have to, you can research in terms of like what are the requirements. So usually, as Zeeshan mentioned, because the master's and PhD students, they are well funded from the faculty. So they actually mention the funding in the offer letter itself, and then you can use, and then they also give you a breakdown of your tuition, and then you can, after deducting all of that, what the Canadian government recommends is to have at least about 11,000 Canadian dollars a year of funding. You have to show additional about 11,000 Canadian dollars a year funding in addition outside of your tuition fees. So this is basically if you take your funding from the faculty, you subtract your tuition fees and other expenses, tuition fees basically, this is how much you would have left. So you wouldn't have to worry about it, and if you're funded through master's and or PhD. And then you have to go through an application process for the study permit. So which is usually gone, you can go through the Canadian Embassy directly, or there are private partners like such as VFS. It is a private partner, an official private partner with the Canadian Embassy, because they all have more locations which they operate with which they link with the Canadian Embassy directly. So the website listed here, the CICGC.ca is the website to go to get all the details in terms of what's requirement, what is the checklist. So basically, you can, as an international student application, you can see the checklist you need to apply for the study permit. And then you basically just have to get all of your documentations together according to the checklist, and then drop off your application into the nearest VFS, or you could go to the Canadian Embassy directly. The processing time could vary between 2 to 5 weeks, again, depending on the location, and depending if you're going through VFS or if you're going through the Canadian Embassy directly. But usually the VFS is very good in terms of handling the application processes. So after you've applied for your study permit and your visa, so what you get in your passport is a TRV stamp. So the TRV is called temporary resident visa stamp. So it's basically like a visitor visa stamp on your passport. And then when you reach the port of entry in Canada, so for example, when you reach to the airport, they will you will give your passport and your details, and along with like the offer letters and everything. So for example, if you're comparing with USA, that's basically the I-20 is your study permit. So you go to, and then the visa officer, sorry, the immigration officer in the airport will hand you the study permit. So you get your study permit after reaching Canada. You don't get your study permit while in India, for example. What you get is the actual TRV visa on your passport. And then when you reach Canada, that's where you get your study permit at the port of entry. Next slide, please. So in terms of, so now you've come to Canada, you've got your study permit, with your visa, you've come to Canada, what happens after? So in terms of what life in Canada looks like, there is a lot of things to cover. Like for example, there is the weather. So that's something to keep in mind when you're applying. There are some provinces which are extremely severe weather. Compared to the other provinces, which are generally mild weather, so very similar to, for example, our Southeast Asian countries. So that's something to keep in mind. But what we are going to cover is something very applicable and specific for students to keep in mind. So first thing is housing. So when it comes to housing, there are two options. One is on-campus housing and off-campus housing. So on-campus housing is generally provided by when I say provided, on-campus housing is serviced and provided by the universities. So basically, the university will give you the place, and these are usually a little bit on the expensive end compared to the off-campus housings. And most of the universities, they actually have separate housing for graduate students. So basically that on-campus housing for graduate students, everyone around you will be all graduate students. And then they have separate on-campus housing for undergraduate students. So basically they try to distinguish so that like you don't have any, and try to separate them so that, for example, graduate students in terms of their studies and in terms of how your life and pressure would be for school and for studies, it would be very different for undergraduate students. So they try to keep that in mind and separate them. And then their on-campus housings are usually furnished as well, so you don't have to worry about furnitures if you get your on-campus housing. And there are also options to include meal plans, so you could also have meal plans with your on-campus housing. On the other hand, the off-campus housing, so every university, pretty much, whichever university you come to, they provide significant level of guidance and assistance in getting you an off-campus housing. So you could go through like their assistantship in terms of like where to look and recommendations of like areas. So for example, that's something to keep in mind when you're going for off-campus housing is your location. So for example, if it's in a very bad, severe weather areas, so if you live very far from campus, it would be very hard for you to get there. And like if you're supposed to live on bus routes or away from bus routes, so these things are to keep in mind when you're looking for off-campus housing, which you don't have to worry about when are living on campus, for example. But this is each universities, again, as I mentioned, there are different universities across Canada, with very different locations and very different weather backgrounds. But when each university will give you enough guidance that you need to get assistance in terms of where should you live with respect to your campus. There are other opportunities, such as you could go through housing groups in Facebook or other social media. So they usually have a lot of like students, they have groups where they share housing or they post. So these off-campus housings, they usually are, because depends on the university, but there are off-campus housing around universities. They keep the study semesters in mind. So, or in Canada we call terms. So they keep the study terms in mind. So those are you could get leases for like a year, or you could get, so most in general, in common, the off-campus housing leases are for a year. So you have to actually sign a lease for a year for the apartment or for the house. Or you could, there are also other options where they would actually allow you to live for like term to term. So you could have like a 4-month lease, for example. And then there are like marketplaces. So there are like online marketplaces or websites that you could go through. The other thing to keep in mind for off-campus housing is private houses, where the landlords are actually providing their place, or their condominiums or houses for rent. Or you could go through an actual apartment company, where the apartment companies have like multiplexes where they rent out each individual apartment. So and then in an apartment you could have rooms to share, so you could get roommates, or you could also have studio apartments where you live by yourself. So that's pretty much like what covers for housing. Next slide, please. And then the other thing to cover, we wanted to cover, is banking. So there are several banks or banking institutions across Canada that provide a lot of services to international students. So basically, because international students, when they come in, the first thing when you arrive, you only have your study permit, or you only have your university offer letter with your funding from the professor, or the funds that you bring in with you. So these are some of the well-reputed banks. So for example, the TD Canada, CIBC, RBC, BMO are very well reputed in terms of providing services to international students, where they won't try, because in Canada, once you come in and once you start working, you have to apply for your social insurance. So that's the SIN card that you have to apply for. So so they would actually, so these banks, they would allow you to open up an account with them as a student, like those are student accounts, without having to require for you to present your SIN card, your social insurance, basically. So these are and then the services and fees, again, the fees would cover ATM fees or monthly fees. They could vary from bank to bank. But you could, one thing that I would definitely recommend is to see which banks, when you worry about this after, or like before you reach Canada, is to see which of these banks' locations are the closest to your campus. Or most of these banks, they actually would have a branch, or have like at least an ATM booth inside the campus. So that's something to keep in mind, so that this would be one less thing to worry about. In terms of like the services and fees, they're very similar across all these banking institutions, but it's just that in terms of locations and accessibility, that's something to keep in mind once you, so that you don't have to like travel too far to get all your banking done, for example. But all of these banks, they also have online banking for free, so you don't have to worry about it too much. Next slide, please. So you have reached Canada, and then we have covered the life in Canada, and then you will go through your education, your rigorous programs of master's or PhD, and then so basically your whole program of studying, and then what happens, and then after your graduation, so the postgraduate life. So as Zeeshan mentioned early on in this webinar, you get an off-campus postgraduate work permit, so which is a 3-year off-campus work permit that you get right away after your graduation. Actually, you get it like right before your graduation, so that you can apply for jobs even before your graduation, because you would have your postgraduate work permit to apply for, that you can use to apply for these jobs. And these are basically, you can apply anywhere that is relevant to your skill set. So basically relevant to your studies. So you can get any job off campus, full-time jobs, like in companies or anywhere else, that is applicable to your study. And the period for this postgraduate work permit is 3 years. And then one other thing to keep in mind is your eligibility to apply for PR, which is the permanent residency under the express skill category in Canada. So it's different for your PR eligibility based on your degree. So for example, if you have a bachelor's, you get it. You're eligible to apply after 2 years of relevant work experience in Canada. So when I say relevant, it has to be in line with your skill set. I mean, it has to be in line with your study or the field of your study. And then it would be after 2 years of your bachelor's degree, or it would be after a year of your relevant work experience in Canada upon completion of your master's or PhD. So you could apply after a year of your so after you graduated from your master's or PhD, after working for a year, you can apply for permanent residency. And the processing is not, it usually takes a couple of months, but it's fairly smooth compared to other countries. Next slide, please. So we have covered a lot in terms of what it looks like in Canada, in terms of like the admission process, in terms of life in Canada, and then post-graduation. I mean, after graduating from your degrees. So now let's look at. So now you would want to ask what does it look like when I compare it to USA? Because I'm guessing a lot of the applicants you would be wondering. You would have the option. You are looking at either US or Canada in terms of your studies. So we'll cover some key details in terms of what to look at when you're looking in Canada and compare it to US. So the admission process is very similar. It's the same as like you have to do your research in the university. You have to look at the requirements for your degree program, and then you have to contact the faculties and the professors who would be willing to take you in as their student. And then you have to apply and go through the process. Similar like for example, in USA, you get your F1 visa with your which is basically the study permit in Canada. So it's the pretty much the same process. In terms of required scores, US prefers SATs for undergrads. That's something is a mandatory requirement right now, and GRE for masters. Again, as Zeeshan mentioned, some universities in Canada have requirements of GRE for masters, but that would depend from program to program. There are also some programs in Canada that may not require GRE, but that would depend again on the university or the program itself. The other thing is the English language proficiency score. So Canada actually prefers IELTS over TOEFL. So they would still accept TOEFL, so they still accept both TOEFL and IELTS, but the preferred score that they have listed for their visa or degree requirement is IELTS. Again, if for IELTS, for some of the universities, the IELTS is not a mandatory for admission, but it is a mandatory requirement for visa. So if you can get your admission without IELTS, you may get your admission without requiring IELTS, but you would definitely need it for your visa purposes. So which you can substitute again with TOEFL. And then lastly is research opportunities, because most of you are looking at for PhD or master's programs. So again, the research opportunities could vary again significantly based on the field of your expertise. So when you compare to USA, because of the length and the breadth of postgraduate programs in USA and the research work, there could be some programs or some fields that you're looking at which may have more exposure in the US when compared to Canada. Again, the post-graduation degrees in Canada, or like applications of research in Canada, is also of significance, but it is slightly different than what it is in US in terms of its broad aspects. So that's something to keep in mind, because there are a lot of the fields, they are very similar when you compare to USA in terms of the breadth and in terms of applications. But again, that could vary depending on the field or the area of your expertise. So the other things to keep in mind is, for example, the tuition fees. So the tuition fees in Canada is relatively cheaper when you compare to USA. That's basically without just looking at the tuition fee numbers themselves, without looking into the scholarships, or without taking the funding into account. And in Canada, there are greater amounts of scholarships available that you can apply for, both like through the universities and outside. So that's tend to be on the more favorable side in Canada when you compare to US in terms of the absolute numbers. And then the housing and living expenses, again, as I mentioned earlier, it would depend significantly on the location. Again, if you're living in the cities or in a university town, so that would vary significantly depending on the location of your that you're living at, as well as the province. So, for example, again, as I mentioned, Ontario, British Columbia, these are a bit on the expensive side compared to Winnipeg or Quebec or Alberta. But when you compare to US, the living expenses tend to be slightly cheaper when you compare in comparison. And then in terms of job opportunities, there are actually and post-graduation life after when compared to USA, there is lots of early career opportunities across different technical fields. For example, that you can apply for right after graduation. That would be applicable for you. And as Zeeshan Bhai also mentioned before, there are also internship programs so that you have which is very which is very helpful for undergraduate students, which, for example, myself went through. They have these programs through co-op where you go through where you go through several terms of internships or several months of internships so that you bank enough work experience by the time you graduate. And so it's very hands-on, and it's very applicable in terms of what you could avail right after graduation. So in terms of career opportunities, early career opportunities, it's significant. I have found it to be there are enough opportunities available for students that they can avail right after graduation. And then it's easier to acquire work visas, permanent residency, and ultimately citizenship. So as we know, when you compare to USA, in Canada, when you compare to USA, there is always this uncertainty: is what happens after you graduate. Like with your once you go to, for example, in USA, once you graduate, you have your OPT, and then you have to look for a sponsor who's going to sponsor you a work visa. Whereas in Canada, you actually get a full-time work visa right after graduation, which is available for 3 years, and then there is a route that you can go through for your permanent residency and get your PR within 1 or 2 years after you're going through the first year of work after post graduation. So it's more easier in terms of like they can. I mean, you have a peace of mind that you would be available, or you would be able to stay in Canada as long as you are willing to stay in Canada through these accelerated permanent residency and then citizenship. So you get your citizenship after 3 years of maintaining your permanent residency. And then last but not the least is the healthcare in Canada. It's significantly, when I say it's better, it's basically because of the cost, and because compared to the cost and the service you get, it's significantly better when you compare to the cost and the service you get in US. So that's something to keep in mind as well for life in US, for life in Canada when you compare it to USA. I know we are all in a very tense situation right now with COVID and post-COVID in terms of what it will look like, right? What it will look like in the future, or what it looks like right now, and how it will look like in the future. So this is, again, it's applicable for current situations. So Canada, as we know, when you compare it to, especially when you compare to USA, they had a more favorable handling of COVID. So this is something to be aware of how things would be moving forward. Again, and then in terms of the job market, there, because of the relevant skill sets, so because of Canada has a lot more of when I say technical and experienced jobs. So that's something that's the reason why the Canadian job market had a very has a slightly different reaction to COVID when you compare to USA. It's because, again, in terms of the relevant skill set, so mostly this relevant skill set that we are looking at, so that we can like for example, the engineers and others, they had a relatively very favorable opportunity during COVID when you compare to USA, where there have been a lot of job losses. And then last but not least is the immigration in Canada, which I again mentioned in the slide before, is that is very very important um, when you're considering your application is just what happens after you graduate. So if you're not looking to, if you're looking if you're looking for moving back to India, for example, after you graduate, that's a very different story. But if you're looking to immigrate, that's something to keep in mind is post-COVID, that this thing is going to be very significant how US handles it moving forward and how Canada handles it moving forward. So this would be kind of an eye-opening in terms of the differentiation between the two countries.
So yeah, thanks Ehsan bhai for such a detailed and comparative presentation about between USA and Canada. So I will talk over this last slide, which is about alumni, AMU Alumni Association in Canada. So this is my 5th year in Canada, and what I've seen so far is like Canada has a very strong presence of AMU alumni, especially in the big cities like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. So far, like whenever I've been to these cities, I have met some of my seniors, and they have what you call an overall Canada-wide AMU Alumni Association. This is the link for it, the last point. But from what I've seen from their website, the senior most alumni from AMU was recorded back in 1959. So it has been like more than 5 decades of presence. And yeah, of course, AMU alumni have represented across various range of sectors. I've seen them in research, I've seen them in bankings and having their own independent businesses. So as I said before, Canada is a kind of a melting pot. It has its own what you call bubbles of regions in Canada where you have a strong presence of Indian diaspora, especially like from AMUs and different institutes and this kind of thing. So you won't feel like much difference once you get used to the climate here. Yeah, so this is, you can always go to this website and look at what kind of thing they do, and you can always join them. And they usually organize AMU, say dinner, and say they have AMU based picnics and those kind of things. So you can always feel connected back home, even if you're here so far. So yeah, finally, yeah, this will end our talk, and you can ask questions to Ehsan bhai, and thanks a lot.
Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
To both the speakers, Dr. Zeeshan bhai and Ehsan bhai. So you have, I mean, successfully convinced us all that Canada is a really good destination for higher studies or works. So now I'm sure that our attendees will have many questions. So we'll start the question session now. So people can ask questions in the chat box, or they can raise their hands and we can unmute them and they can ask questions.
I think, Vasik bhai, we have one question already in the chat box. Let me pull it out. Are there any opportunities or facilities for medical graduates? Tahira is asking this question. So any speaker would like to take.
Maybe Ehsan bhai has some of.
I can take that. So yes, so there are definitely there are a lot of opportunities of the medical in the field of medical graduates. So one thing to keep in mind is for medical graduates, they actually have this because of the residency that you get. So for example, if you come into Canada and then you go through your medical degree and then you go through your residency, you can actually apply for a residency in US as well. So because they share the same kind of studies, especially for the medical field, you can go through your residency in US after completing your studies in Canada, for example. But the one thing to keep in mind for medical graduates is they have a very limited number of programs and universities that offer them. And most of them, they're actually, unfortunately, they don't have the opening for international students. So because of the expense required for medical graduates, for the medical studies, they don't have a lot of options available for international students. But again, there are some opportunities, but it's not as wide as the other research areas or other applications of studies.
Thanks a lot.
I
Ehsan.
hope, Tahira, that's answer your question. There is one more question already in the chat box. It says, one more thing. How is the prospects of setting permanently in Canada? Someone with Realme or something, yeah.
I can take that too. So the prospects of settling down in Canada is significantly great when you compare to, for example, US. And again, as I mentioned, after you graduate, it's pretty much you can have this peace of mind that you are well taken care of through these accelerated programs of residency. So permanent residency, I mean. So for example, you will get your 3-year off-campus work permit through which you can apply to any job within Canada, for example. But and then while you're working through that work permit that Canada provides you, you also have this opportunity to apply for permanent residency. So I would say the prospect of settling, I mean, if you want to settle in Canada, it is very great. It is very good in terms of, again, it's just that the duration, so basically the time it takes for you to get your permanent residency, that would vary depending on the location. So that could vary. If you're in Ontario, for example, they usually have a slightly longer wait period compared to other provinces, but overall it's really good when you compare to, for example, US.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Ehsan bhai. So Ehsan bhai, do you have to leave at 10? I'm just
yes, so I unfortunately have to leave. I have a hard stop at 10, but again, Zeeshan bhai is here, and if there is any question that I can help answer, feel free to reach out to the SSGSA team, and I can definitely get back to you with a response.
So,
thank you.
yeah,
Thank you,
thanks a
Ehsan
lot.
bhai, for joining with us today.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
really
Thank you,
enjoyed it.
everyone.
It was quite informative. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you,
a lot,
everyone,
Ehsan.
for joining the webinar. I wish you all the very best in your future endeavors. Thank you, everyone.
Sure. Thanks. So now we have next
Zeeshan
question
bhai?
is from
Yes.
Aisha Zabin.
Yep.
The postdoctoral opportunities in economics. So Zeeshan bhai, you want to take the question?
Yeah, it's not much different from the higher educations, like the idea of getting work permit. So if you're applying for postdoctoral fellowship here, you won't get an open work permit. Like you will come here on a study, or sorry, on a work permit, but it will be linked to your job. So when you join a postdoctoral, say in University of Alberta, so your work permit will be applicable to just that one university. That's the only thing that will limit you. But after 1 year of, like after finishing your 1 year of work experience in Canada, you can apply for a permanent residency. So in that sense, it's not much different than doing masters or PhD. It's almost same. It's just that in your first year, you won't have an option of changing the job. That's the only difference.
There is one question by Fahad. We missed it. He is asking how we can convert Indian CGPA to Canadian. I believe there are so many online portals already available for that. Is there any specific one, Zeeshan bhai, where a person has to go for conversion from GPA
yeah, I recall that on every university website they have this common link for it's kind of a government link, Canadian government link, where you choose the country and it converts it for you. So maybe I can find it out and share it with you guys.
So what I can remember, there is a World Education Service, I think WES.org, I guess. So in that website, one can convert their degree from any one country to another country. But that works for US actually. So that should work for Canada as well.
Yes, same. It's almost same.
There are some questions. What are the average TOEFL score? I think that vary according to the university. So I don't think Yeah. What are the opportunities for graduates of Islamic or Arabic studies done from Egypt or KSA? So that's a good
Well,
question.
yes, of course, there are many what you call uh, there are theology, this kind of departments in the campuses, like they have department of theology and these interfaith studies kind of degrees here. So I have seen a lot of students from Islamic universities, like Islamic University of Cairo and these kind of reputed places coming here, they are doing their masters here. So you just need to search for the department. Like you need to go to the campuses and look at if there is a master in Islamic studies and these kind of interfaith studies. I'm sure that there are opportunities for for a kind of for doing masters or even research.
So the bottom line is students need to search for it, go to the websites and just Google, start from Google, and let's see how many departments are there, how many programs are offered in different universities.
And it's very similar to India because it was a British colony. So even though it may sound strange, but there are universities, like top universities, you will find a department of Islamic studies here and this kind of different studies, department of Judeo study, department of Christian studies.
Just like US, yes.
Just like US, yeah.
And there are some very general questions. I would like Zeeshan bhai to answer all of them in just one go because they are kind of related to each other. For example, the one guy, what's his name? Muhammad Abdullah is asking, how do we know that our CV is competent? I think it's a very wide question. So what's your, and how should, about the GRE waivers, like GRE has been waived for most universities in the light of COVID for 2020. Is Canada also having the same thing, or Canada is not, is strict to it that they require GRE right now?
Yep. So I will answer the second question first. Yes, even in Canada, I have seen they have waived off GRE for this particular year, academic year, at least in University of Waterloo and University of Toronto. So I am for sure it's almost same for Canada. You just need to go to their website, which is type the university name of the department, and just type postgraduate admission, and you will get a page that will tell you whether GRE. I mean, you need to go to that section that defines what are the minimum criteria, and there will be most probably what I have seen, because University of Toronto is one of the most reputed and it has waived off. So most probably it will be waived off for other university as well, especially for this 1 year. But yeah, let's double check it before confirming it. And yeah, going to the first question about the CV, can I answer it, or do you have more questions?
Yes. Go ahead. Sorry for interrupting.
So yeah, depending on the CV, so it depends what you are doing with that CV. If it is a CV that you are submitting for admission in the university portal, then it has to be detailed, because it will go through a rigorous filtering process, because there is a whole what you call office of admission, and they will look at your each and every point, and they will filter you out. So you can have a bit long CV. Usually CVs are for one and a half page. So if you are going for a proper admission, then you can put a lot more details in your CV. But if you are approaching a professor, if you're sending an email to professor saying that I'm interested in your work and please look at my CV, then don't make it very long. Make it short, because the professor doesn't have that much time. If he clicks it and he sees like 5 pages of CVs, he will be reluctant to read everything. So if you are addressing a person and you just want to have a short span of attention, make your CV very brief. Just put the points that are the most important to you, like name of the projects and what kind of awards you have won, and highlight those things and keep it very brief. Yeah, that's from my experience. Like if you are applying to a professor, or if you're sending your CV to a university.
That's good. One of the question, and I felt it's most of the Indian students, and from those they have this thing. He's saying that he's having a 3 year of bachelor's. Are they eligible for masters in Canada, or do they have to go for one more year in order to be eligible there?
No, they will be eligible for masters straight away. They don't need to go to one extra. Yeah, they take the bachelors of any country as equivalent of the bachelors here. The only issue is if you have integrated masters in India, and if you want to join PhD here, they will in some universities they will make you do the 1 year master again, and that is only for integrated masters, in which you have 4 years of combined graduation and master degree. Yeah.
Just a very it's my own question. For masters and PhD, how do they require to have a research training or technical training somewhere, or what weightage does it give? I think that will answer most of the questions in there. People are asking that they did so many things, and do they think that their application is strong enough to be accepted? Or if a person is freshly graduate, does he have to have a publication or something to get into a very high, like to get a good funding or position or anything? So that's I would like you to answer that thing, if possible.
So it depends. So see, when is one thing is you're applying to a university and you put in all your research experience. So the final step for any admission is you need to convince your supervisor for to fund you, right, to give you admission. So the final judgment is in the hand of a professor, and the way professor judges a student is he had certain, most of the labs they have certain requirements, right? If you are from fundamental sciences, they expect a certain skill set in the student, and they don't always look for all the skill set. They don't want a perfect student. Like, they know the reality. Not every undergraduate has a proper hand-on experience with everything, right? So what they look is they will look at the pool of students that have applied to them, and they will try to pick the one which has the most relevant skill set. That's the thumb rule. The professor don't want to spend a lot of time on student to train him, but it is still justifiable. Like, it's not in a sense that uh, uh, he will look for a perfect student, but he will look it from the pool of student. And what I have seen is if you don't have a lot of research experience, and if you're not targeting a one particular lab or field, you can always generalize. Like, you can apply to you can send an email to a couple of professors, and for masters it's not an issue at all. Like, if you don't have a lot of research experience, just because if you have a very good CV, if you have a very good high CGPA, and you have shown academic uh, academic achievement throughout your career, like in India's, right? If you compare it to India, if you have any national level of exam qualified, if you have a diverse CV, you will have a much higher chances of getting into a master's. When it comes to PhD, it becomes a bit tricky. Then it depends on the professor to professor. There are professors who are new, like especially if they are new hired, they are assistant professors, they are building up a lab. They will not be that choosy because they need a student right then. They will look at your CV profile, and because every university has their own coursework, so you will go through coursework, you will go through all those hands-on training. Like, just because you are trained in back home in India in certain research project doesn't mean you will just come here and start working. You have to go through again training and everything. So it's you can still get into it. What research experience does is for a certain labs, it increases your chances. So if you are good in one particular thing, you can highlight that and you can target one professor and say, see what you are doing in your lab. I have done it before. I've done a thing similar to it. So it increases your chances of getting admitted, but it's not the final criteria. And most of the admission that happens, they don't have this special criteria. So you always have chances, like even without a very good a specific research experience. So don't worry about it that much. Just concentrate on what you have and try to sell it to the professor. Yeah.
There is one question. Can we, Wasim Ahmed Saab is asking, can we manage to stay with our spouses or our respective partners in Canada during the PhD duration? I think he wants to know about whether it's economically possible or not. I think that's where he's asking. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
The exact.
Yeah. I mean, you have to take into account your how much funding you're getting. So what I have from my own experience is if you are staying with the spouse in Canada during your PhD, you either need to have external funding, because that number, that $11,000. So what every university does is that they increase their funding and decrease their funding according to the tuition fees. So what they do is they always keep it balanced so that the remaining money is more than that, and they won't give you like $1,500 of saving per month. So for two people living in Canada in that amount of money, it's doable. You can do that, but it's really what you call economically it will be a bit of challenging, because one person spends at least, I will say, $1,000 a month easily. Your monthly rent is $500. Your food rent is $300. So if you're a couple, you need a 1-bedroom apartment that itself will cost around $800 to $1,000. So for a couple, you need to have at least 2,000 or more than that, depending on where you're living, as a saving every month. So I mean, for anyone who's concerned with it, like whether you can survive with your spouse, just look at how much you are saving every month. If you are saving more than $2,000 every month, you can do it, but you won't be able to save then. Most of the money will be spent on your own spending. So, and $2,000 is, I mean, not in Toronto. If you are in Waterloo or Quebec and Montreal, if you're in Toronto, you need at least $2,500, because the house itself will cost around $1,500. So look at the average renting cost of that city, and then calculate. Add like $500 extra for each person, and then do the math. Yeah.
Vasikul bhai, I don't think we
I think
left any
did we
questions.
cover the question? What about teaching prospects in Canada? Someone asked question.
Oh, okay.
Bushra
Yeah, I
Miraj
think I missed that.
Mhm.
Bushra Miraj is asking, what about teaching prospects in Canada?
I mean, in what sense? I mean, after completing the education from here, or is she mentioning about the teaching assistantship?
No, that's very very wide and very vague. She just said, what about teaching prospects in Canada? Maybe she's talking about like going from India to Canada.
All right. I mean, if you want to have a teaching jobs in, say, high school and maybe elementary college, right?
I think Bushra right now clarified her question. She asked that after completing MSc in chemistry.
But again, Vasik bhai, I think it's better if Bushra can unmute and ask the question directly, because it's not clear whether is she doing masters in chemistry in India or in Canada. So I would ask Bushra Miraj, please, if you can unmute yourself and you can ask the question directly. Hello, Bushra.
She has unmuted, but I don't hear. Anyway, so Zeeshan bhai can explain in generic.
I mean, from what I understand, if so there are two cases: whether you have masters from back home in India and you want to come here and teach, like maybe graduate level masters, right? Thumb rule is, if you are masters, you can easily teach up to graduate level. So it's a bit tricky actually to understand, like to clearly state whether it's easy or not. There are institutes which are not research-based institutes, like the ones which they only have classes up to higher uh, undergraduate level, and they don't do research, they just have classes. So there are options that you can apply for the jobs there, uh, go through their filtering process and get the job as a lecturer in say in up to graduate level of chemistry, or maybe high school level. High school level here is like +2 in India. So yeah, nothing stops you. It's not like a medical field where you need to pass residency and everything. If you have a background of a particular field, you can apply for a job here. It's just like open work permit. So there you can of course explore it up to high school level or graduate level lecturership position. Uh, at least that's what I can guess.
Yeah. So the Bushra, the bottom line is, yes, there may be options, and there should be options. Obviously, there will be options in the high schools, and sometimes some community colleges or some undergrad colleges where, I mean, if you have masters, then you may be able to teach. So the best way is to just explore. Start from Google or LinkedIn or also the job websites and see what are the requirements for the job. If you find some good teaching position, you can apply.
Yeah.
Bushra, are you there?
Yeah, I
She
think
was
she
saying that
raised
she
hand.
can.
But,
Yeah.
all right. So I think we
Okay.
have few more. Okay, so Bushra, if you have further question, you can please follow up in the chat box, because that has been already answered. So we can see a few more questions. Zaid asks that I have completed my BTech in civil engineering and will be applying for fall 2021 for MS in construction management. I have some CPI, which is okay. So I still don't have a job. So how to make my application strong enough to get accepted? So for those who are not confident that their CPA is excellent, and so they're looking for advice for applying to Canada, what should they do to make their applications strong?
Uh, so see, if you are applying for a MS program, so there are two kind of MS program here. One is MSc, which is a research-based masters, and then there is called MEng, which is a 1 year of coursework. So what I have seen is that for MASc, which is like compare it to India's MTech or masters, every university has a very hard what you call cutoff, that your CGPA has to be this much, but they don't look for your overall CGPA. They just look for your final 2 years, as far as I remember. So check it, what to say, if it is for final 2 years or if it is for, sorry, your last 2 years or something like that. So check it. If you don't satisfy that, you can also look for MEng, which is like a 1 year master's program. The difference between those two is MEng is much easier to get in. They have a fairly relaxed cutoff for CGPA. The thing is they don't fund you, so you need to pay the fees. It's not funded. It's not a research-based master. But yeah, in that one you can apply. But if you don't satisfy the criteria and you still very strongly feel that you can make your CV strong, I will highly recommend you to send a direct email to a professor. That's what I mentioned there, that if a professor is willing to take you, no one can stop you. He can bend few of the rules up and down to get you in to his and her group. So if your CGPA is like few point up and down, it's not reaching that level, but you still strongly want to target a particular professor and you think that you can convince him or her, it's still possible. You can convince a professor to take you. He or she will take your Skype interview, and you can mention in your Skype interviews that this is your CGPA and this is that, and you can highlight your other achievements. I have seen a lot of people who don't have uh, CGPA close to the cutoff, but they get in because of their relevant research experience. So that is where your research experience, your publication, and everything come in. You of course you can't go through a university web portal because it will not accept your application. So you have to go through other way. We need to apply to send an email to a professor, get a response from him and her, and then when he agrees, then you can apply.
Thanks a lot, Zeeshan bhai. So we got another question which is relevant. Wasim Ahmed asks that what is counted as a good CGPA in Canada on Canadian scale? So I mean, yeah. So there should not be any straight answer, but yeah, Zeeshan bhai, if you want to answer.
I mean, yeah, you have to look at the cutoff for every coursework.
So GPA is out of 4, right, in Canada? I mean, yeah. So four out of 4 is the best. So if you convert, if it is a 4 out of 4, that is the best. But even if it is a little small, I mean, not 4, that is also fine. That should be fine.
I think anything above 3 is considered as good because that corresponds to like more than 75%.
And I believe, as Zeeshan bhai said, in the end, it's totally depend upon your professor. If you are lacking by 1 point of a difference, he can bend the rule. And if you have other things that are giving weightage to your CV, he can bend the rules and have you into the program. So it's all depend upon the professor. But I agree with Zeeshan bhai on this. 3 and 3 above CGPA is considered good, and it reflects your integrity also. So I believe that. She answered, Bushra said, she messaged me the question that I have 7 years of teaching experience in some school in Muscat, Oman. So do I have to apply for master's program again or for PhD? I have already completed my, so yeah, that's what the thing is, I guess.
So see, if you have a 7 year of working experience, of course and if you already have a master, right? So you need to decide why, like, of course, the main aim then will be the job, not the education, because you want to teach here, right? And that's what you want to immigrate to here. So the easiest way to immigrate is to apply for an open work permit. Like, don't go through unless you want to do PhD. So you need to decide what you want to do. You want to do PhD or you want to do job here. If you want to do PhD, then the process is very straightforward. You apply for a PhD position, or even for a master. Doing a second master I don't recommend that. If you already have a master and 7 years of experience, you should apply for PhD if you're going for higher education. And then you can, of course, it's a study permit. You can do your PhD and everything. But if your aim is to do job here and teach as a lecturer because you want to teach, you have a master degree, then I will say apply for open work permit, which is a point-based system. It's a different system. It's a kind of an open immigration. You apply for that, and most probably you will get open work permit to come. I mean, I think it's not open work permit is the easiest one. You can also apply for PR straight away because you have 7 years of experience. So you will get points for each one of year. So what I would suggest is to go through a Canadian immigration website. Search for your, so there is a kind of a calculator there, and it calculates how much points you have. If your points is above the cutoff, you can straight away get the PR. And if you get a PR, you can come here as an immigrant, right? And you can search for a lecturer position straight away. And there's an advantage of coming here as a PR, because as a PR, your fees will be much lower than an international student. So even if you come here and you think that, okay, no, it's not working for me, I should do PhD to make my profile stronger, you can still do PhD as a PR, and your fees will be much less. You will have much higher funding. You don't need to worry about money then. So there are a lot of advantages of coming here as a PR and then complete your studies and look for jobs, rather than coming here as a student, then finish your coursework and then look for the jobs. Especially with your profile, I will suggest taking the second route, coming here as a PR or an open work permit, and then think what is good for you. You want to do higher research, then go for PhD. If you just want to have job and you have 7 years of experience, inshallah you will get a job here. So take that approach of a PR or an open work permit.
Okay, I think she just texted me that she get the detailed description, and thanks a lot for answering her question. I think Vasikul bhai, I think we have completed, I think, all the questions that were in the chat box, and I believe
So
all the
we asked the
answers
last
they
time
can.
that if
Yeah,
anyone has any more question, last question, if anyone has,
yeah.
you can ask. Otherwise, we
Yeah.
can
I
always
think
contact us.
I'm getting some private messages on me. I think hopefully I can answer it from here to
Sure, sure.
whoever.
Yes, yes. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, do I need to? Okay, I can just say. So the question is something like, it's been 2 years. Okay. Do I have to apply for a master program again or a PhD program? Uh, it's a similar question. If you have done a master's, uh, and if you have a good CGPA, you qualify for all the your marks are above cutoff for every university, and you want to do PhD. I will suggest going for a PhD rather than masters again, because there is no point in doing master twice. Uh, uh, so aim for PhD, but if you just uh, because one thing is here in Canada is sometimes the professor doesn't accept you for a PhD straight away. And yeah, I should address this question. What they will do is, like, they think that the student is good, but they are not sure about you. So what they will do is they will offer you a master first. They will say, come here as a master, work in my lab for a year, and if I think you are good, I will extend it to PhD. You can extend the same project in your PhD and you can finish it. So it is one of the routes that might come up in front of you. Like you apply for PhD, but the professor says, yeah, I will offer you masters if you are good with that. So if anyone has completed an MS masters and he or she is confused whether you should do masters again or PhD, I will say apply for PhD, because even if you don't get for PhD, sometimes you might get option of getting back and doing masters as an offer from a professor. But if you're not getting any PhD offers, uh, you can try doing masters again, and you can even convince the professor. Like, when you join a lab and you become a master student, you interact with the professor directly, and if he or she likes you, it increases the probability of going into a PhD after that. So it can be an option if you're looking for if you're really interested in in research and you want to do your PhD here.
I think there is one
So that was all,
question.
Zeeshan bhai, or is there anything?
I'm getting some more private messages.
So please, all students, if you want to ask, you can just to copy that into a chat box to everyone. That may be helpful, because if
Yeah.
someone else has a similar question, that question will
Yeah.
not be repeated. Okay, please type in. Feel free to type.
So should I answer this question, or?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
It says that you have done MTech and your CPI was 9.6. It's really good for sure. But you don't have he or she doesn't have much research experience. Should I apply for masters or PhD? So yeah, it's again going back to the same question. If you have MTech and if your CPI is really good, I will recommend applying for PhD first, and not just applying. Yeah, actively searching the lab, because once you're, like, if you are MTech, you are very specialized. You know that you are expert in this and this field. So look for the professor and the lab that fits into your field of expertise, and approach them for PhD. Don't approach them for masters, because what professor does, like, if somebody tells him that I want to do masters under you, he will be happy, because funding a master is cheaper than funding a PhD. So anyway, the professor will want you to offer masters before PhD. So apply for PhD, negotiate for PhD. But if you're not getting any offer, and if some professor is offering you masters, then accept it. It's fine. If you think that you are really interested in that particular lab and group, and you're confident enough that once you join the group, you will grow and you will be upgraded to a PhD. But don't aim for masters if you already have master. Keep it as a backup, and apply for it when you don't get any response, and you feel, okay, I'm not going anywhere, and the deadlines are coming, and what should I do? Then, of course, and if you think that you're willing to spend 1 or 2 extra year in your PhD, uh, it's not a bad way. You can apply for masters. It's much easier to get in, and then you can upgrade to PhD. But yeah, apply for PhD first, especially if you have MTechs and masters and such a good CGPA.
I think that's. Do you have any other questions, Zeeshan bhai, or that is it?
I think that's it.
Okay. Wasiq bhai, do we have any more questions, or we can
I
end the
was
session now?
going through now, so yeah, I don't see question. So if all right, there is one more question. So okay, this is the last question. Okay, we will not take any more questions. So Wasim, please go ahead and ask your question. After that, we will conclude our webinar. Hello, Wasim, you typed. So you can unmute yourself and you can ask verbally as well. Is self employment experience has I mean they are counted or not?
Does it count as a experience?
Yes.
So the way you define self-employment is if you have any startup or like you have any, I mean, the way I understand it, people start up their own stuff, right? Especially if they are in tech. You can develop an app or something, and you can prove it that, okay, I was developing this app, I had this startup and those kind of things. So the way you define self-employment is like if you have done something meaningful in a particular period of time, which you think you can sell in your PhD or master's application, it's good actually. Professor likes it if a student is what you call has the zeal of doing startup or developing something. So depending on what you call self-employment, if you're doing something fruitful and you can sell it, of course you can sell it. You can say that I am a CEO of this company and I'm doing this and that. So it adds into your profile.
All right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. So, I mean, there is no straight actually answer that. I mean, it depends on what kind of experience you have and how that is relevant to your degree program. If it is relevant to the degree program, then that will count it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think we have we have answered all the questions, and it has been a webinar more than 1.5 hours. So at this point, we are not taking any more questions. So we would like to thank both our speakers, Dr. Zeeshan bhai and Mr. Ehsan bhai. Both of them have answered very nicely all the questions, and they have given us very good descriptions about prospects of higher studies in Canada. And they have successfully convinced us that how good destination Canada is for higher studies. So we as SSGSA, we don't limit. I mean, we encourage the students to explore opportunities in any countries, wherever. Mostly we have US based organization, but we always encourage them to look for opportunities in Europe, on Canada. So I'm sure this webinar will be very helpful to them. And we are going to put the recording in our YouTube channel as well. So those who could not attend, or those who could not attend the full, they can get they can benefit it out of it. So thanks a lot to speakers, Mohd, Zeeshan bhai.
Thanks a lot, Wasikul, and I mean it was really great to meet with all of you and see what kind of work you guys are doing, and I'm really glad to be part of it. Again, thanks for organizing it.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank you, Zeeshan bhai, and just for the recording, thank you, Ehsan bhai, also for being having a really informative seminar. I've been receiving some messages in my private box that you have covered very tiny details also that they couldn't find it online or any other place. So they are also very thankful for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Zeeshan bhai.